So I'm going to talk about Iran's water bankruptcy today. And for those of you who might have seen pictures of Iran or have been to Iran, this is Ain Darud River in central Iran, in the city of Isfahan, former capital of Iran. And this is how the city and the river looks like most of the year. This is about, I think, 3-4 years ago when we were shooting a documentary for Al Jazeera over there. I grew up in a water family. My parents both worked for the water sector in Iran. I was the only child, and they had no choice but taking me to all trips and missions and so on. So I grew up learning about all water projects around the country and so on. And I think water was a natural choice for me. That's what I studied later on, but as an engineer. And over time, learning about the complexities and everything, started talking about the policy dimensions of the problems, the things that normally most of us engineers don't think about it. So I started my career in engineering, but to the engineers, I'm a communist. I talk too much about humans. And later on, I was in the environmental policy department at Imperial College. And after that, after going to London, after being, doing my education here, being a faculty in Florida and then going to London, I got closer to Iran, and it was easier to work on Iran matters. And started working more with Iran, interacting more with media people, talking about some problems in Iran which I saw through a different lens. And I think the California case and California education helped me a lot, because a lot of things that I see in the Middle East today are similar to the problems that the Californians in US West have experienced in their development process. They are different in terms of consequences and the capacity of the systems to respond to the problem, but it was good to see that these problems are not unique in the world. These are the things that others have also experienced. Yes, Iran is very unique when it comes to its politics, when it comes to its international relations and so on, but maybe this is a similar problem. Later on, I can tell you why Iran's problems are also unique in water and environmental sector. But that was the reason for interacting more, trying to promote some narratives, try to look at things factual, try to make things apolitical. Because when you talk about Iran's problems, everything becomes political. You have an enemy called the government of the Islamic Republic, and everything must be blamed on this government, no matter what. So then you don't become factual. Your analysis is not deep. It's like this evil which is running everything wrong, and then you forget that environmental problems don't appear overnight. They're like, there's a legacy issue. There are as they appear after decades of bad management and decades of bad decisions. And if you want to understand what is going on, you have to look at the causal relationship of everything. Okay, I said a lot of, I criticized the government a lot, and I said things that many people didn't like. I said that we shouldn't blame climate change for the problems we are seeing. We should blame governments. We should blame engineers. We should blame ourselves for the decisions that we have made. And these things at the beginning were bitter. A lot of people didn't like me, but at some point, when President Rouhani got elected again, I was asked by Tehran if I'll be willing to go to Iran and serve as the deputy head of Iran's Department of Environment. It was very unusual. As far as we know, at least in the last 40 years, the last 41 years, the Islamic Republic hasn't done something like that at the beginning. Right after the revolution, many people went to Iran, but like after 40 years, they approach someone who doesn't belong to the inner circle, who shaves, doesn't look like them, and is doing academic work to go and serve. So how do you interpret this? Yes, the easiest answer is you can't get anything done in this system, right? And that was the answer that I got from many people. And I thought, first, that was my first reaction too. Second, you don't know if this is a bribe, like they want you to shut up, or they really want you to get things done. Anyway, it was a hard decision. And then for me it was, but we know the chance of success is very low. But what if I succeed? Thank you. I can't pick plastic bottled water. So So what if there's a chance for success? There would be more space for experts to get roles on government. My generation has not have any role in the government of Iran. This is my generation, the baby boom generation of Iran, who will retire before contributing to Iran. And then those who are outside and care about the country. And my thought was, what if they realize that not all of us who have left the country are the enemies of Iran, and allies with this country or that country or whatever. So the only thing I asked the vice president, can you go get confirmation that I don't get into, I get approved by the system because I don't want to end up in jail. That was my only condition for working with them. And then I went back to London to negotiate my leave of absence terms with Imperial College, but Iran is Iran, so I was there. They appointed me without even giving me advance notice. So I realized through the news that I've got appointed. It was excitement. Like the last few days after this appointment, it was unprecedented. It created hope. A lot of people were like, okay, let's see if this guy can do anything. And a lot of positive reaction, which for the government was also surprising. The government was not expecting this. Okay, so I get appointed on a Sunday. I think this news came on Monday. I left Heathrow Airport, London, Tuesday night with eyes full of tears, thinking that it was a big decision. Going back to Iran after 14 years. 5 hours later, at Tehran, I walked fast. I was the first one at the passport control when we got off the plane. And I got arrested by the IRGC. So Iran's Revolutionary Guard. So, I thought there will be a red carpet and they're waiting for me. But they were waiting for me in a different way. So the Iran Revolutionary Guards, Iran's shadow government in conflict with the civilian elected, whatever you want to name it, and the existing government of Iran or the official government of Iran, they have issues, they have conflicts, and then they attack each other. So one way to show or prove that the government is not good, it's not functional, is to prove that there are tons of spies on it. And so the scenario started. I was supposed to be proven, that I'm working for Mossad, CIA, and MI6, of course, if I'm working for an Imperial College. So there were cartoons of me, the British Queen sitting on her, sending me to Iran with love, and then the vice president sitting on his knees on the other side saying, "Kaveh, come home, the water crisis needs you." So the game started, and then when I was in detention, they hacked into all my accounts. They took control of everything, my virtual life and everything. Again, of course, I was offended. Your privacy gets violated. The details of your life gets out. But I was like, okay, any paparazzi photos, anything that they wanted to have access to, now they have access to it. It's me, this is me. But I haven't done anything wrong. So now you know me, and I know I haven't done anything against national security. I haven't done anything against Iran. So you guys need to decide if you want me here or not. I worked for 7 months. Crackdown of environmentalists in Iran started. More than 9 people got arrested, but 8 of them have been under arrest for more than 2 years now. They got their charges are crazy, and the verdict is crazy. So 2 of them that we know from our connections and loops, and they were friends of us. One from Connecticut, actually, Iranian American, who went home to help. He got 10 years. He has to be in Iran for 10 years, and he has to pay $600,000. And then another young lady who went back, and she has to serve for it. She has to be in jail for 10. Similar story. And one person dead. One person died in detention. Still, we don't know what has happened. An Iranian Canadian professor. All these people involved in environmental conservation and environmental space. And as we speak, you realize, I think, why the environmental space is getting securitized by governments of the region. And it's not, believe me, it's not only Iran. I've had an Egyptian student who 2 years into his PhD program got attacked by the the Egyptian intelligence for working with an Iranian because they didn't want the Iranians to have access to the Nile River data. So it is not, it's something which is increasingly getting, it's a space that governments are getting more and more worried about as they see the problem. So after being interrogated many times, getting into detention and so on, and after what I saw in Iran, I decided to resign in a diplomatic trip and never went back. But so yeah, they called me a spy, and they still do that. And I was a spy for the people of Iran on the government. I was a spy for the academics on the government to see how things are run, are being done, and how the decisions are being made. And I think now that I'm alive and safe, I can say I had the best sabbatical ever. But which helps me change my research questions, see the world differently. And but let's talk about it. On the surface, Iran is experiencing water and environmental problem as other countries in the region. Iran, in my opinion, is ahead of the curve and has produced some of the problems before some of the other neighboring countries. Put Israel aside, we can argue why Israel is different in terms of development path from the rest of the countries. But the rest of the countries pretty much have similar problems. And depending on their social status, economic status, peace level, and so on, they have a chance or not have a chance to deal with environmental problems. But Iran has a very diverse climate. We are very proud of it. We say, the level of temperature changes around the country, and you go from one region to another. Temperature varies a lot. We say, like in any particular time, you can pick your favorite climate, and within 1 hour of flight, you can get to whatever you like. Same thing with precipitation and the level of water that we get with the natural budget given to us. Close to the Caspian Sea coast is very wet and humid. So west of the country, we get snowfall and a lot of rain. Actually, the past few days, we have had major floods in this area. Big parts of Iran are very dry. So 90% of the country is semi-arid or arid. And this is the country we have chosen for living. And then the other thing is development path. While in the old days, you were developing things, civilizations by water and close to natural resources. When technology helped us and we became more confident, we decided where to live. We decided that we wanted to be in Los Angeles. Okay, there is no water, we bring water from San Francisco. Same here. We decided to live near Isfahan and take everything inland because we were afraid of invasions of other countries. We didn't want to develop by the coast. This is a very interesting thing. More than 50% of the population in the US live by the coast. But we don't live by our coast, and we have decided to go inland. And if you decide to live in, where there is dry and you want to farm and grow food and run your industry, you need water. So you either go grab it from somewhere else or you pump groundwater, which causes a lot of problems. So about the average precipitation in Iran is 250 millimeters, and 70% of the country gets less than 250 millimeters. I don't want to confuse you with numbers. The other thing which is important in Iran is similar to California, even though like most of California in north we are getting snow, but what we have in Iran is 75% of water given to us by nature comes when we don't need it for irrigation. So it's 75% off season. So what do you do when the water comes when you don't want it? What do you do? Build dams. That was your solution, actually. We were running the system through qanats and underground tunnels, and that's how the country, the Persians ran their system for thousands of years. But being so impressed with the Hoover Dam and being so impressed with the Western model of development, the interest in conflict, the interest of the Middle Eastern in concrete and steel, which we can't get rid of, got us interested in becoming modern and becoming more powerful and building things. So you build dams to regulate the flow, to beat the nature, to run the nature, to govern the nature. And with that, then there would be consequences, and we can talk about it. And you transfer water, like what we have done in California. So temperature variability is also high when in some areas that are hotter. So if they're close to the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, then you have high humidity. In some areas, it's desert and you can't even live there. And in the rest of the places, things are different. But why is temperature important? Because high temperature means evaporation. High evaporation means thirsty crops, right? So your crops need water. So you lose a lot of water through evaporation. Again, this is not rocket science. Wherever in the world you decide to irrigate, you eventually run out of water. Water is gonna be a limit. So Iran is no exception. We are running out of water because we have decided to farm where we shouldn't. So in central Iran, we're growing rice because the Persians like their own rice. And we have to eat rice. And we can't get rid of it, and then that comes at a cost, other costs. So what is important is another thing. Again, I don't want to confuse you with numbers, but engineers plan based on water budgets. So that we were given a number. This is how much water we have in the system. And then we do planning based on that number. Most of the time we look into the future and try to project and predict and forecast. And most of the time we don't question the ground truth. We don't look at the past and say, who did the calculation? Who gave us these numbers? So for many, many years, Iran has been planning based on this magic number of 130 billion cubic meters of water. Did it exist in the system? We don't know. Was it a real number? Maybe it was the best estimation some 40, 50 years ago. But, it is still with the current, with all data science, machine learning, all the things that we have, still its estimation of water budget is not an easy task. So now then we did all these things. We started developing and allocating and go develop this city and build this here and build there, develop agricultural land. And then we realized there are problems. Now we're saying, oh, maybe that number is wrong. We have about less than 100. We have about 90. We have 70. Still people don't do budget calculations. They just throw numbers because that's the easiest way to explain the problem. And you can say this is because of climate change. That's the easiest solution. And indeed, the Western, I think, attitude, and here in this part of the planet, we like to climatize things. We in a climate change community, environmental community, we want more attention to climate change. We don't have some of the problems that those guys have. So climate change is something. So if there is a flood, there is a snow, any extreme event, we say it's climate change, right? That's what media tells us. That's what you read. Australian fire, climate change. Brazil, fire, climate change. California, fire, climate change. California, drought, climate change. I don't think you can say that easy because it's, yes, there is a guess and you can say climate change might have exacerbated the problem, but you can't say with certainty that this is the result of climate change. And all events cannot be the result of climate change because in the past we have had fluctuations in the nature. Yes, frequency increases, intensity increases. But why is this important? Because as soon as you point things, you identify climate change as the cause, leaders in the developing world love the narrative you sell. They promote it as well, they echo it as well. Why is that good? Because that's a gift to those leaders. Because if you say it's climate change, it means that they're not liable. They didn't do anything wrong. Who created climate change? The developed world. They're the problem. They're the ones causing these problems. So when you go to that part of the world, it's really hard actually to talk about climate change and say climate change is a fact and we have to deal with it. But also, let's not forget that you have made this mistake and that, all these things that you've done. Because if you say that it might not be climate change, then you're a climate change denier. If you say it's all climate change, then you're an apologist for the government. So it is very tricky. When it comes to to drinking water, Iran has very good standards. Now we're hearing stories about pollution in the treated water and clean water that we get from our taps in major cities, as we are seeing, like, EPA a few years ago. We heard about the failures of EPA in many cities in the United States. Water is not clean, and the tap water might not be as clean as we perceive it. I don't think bottled water is any better. Because of the lack of regulation, but still, I think tap water is generally a safer option in most places. But Iran, 99.8% of the urban population have access to clean water, treated water, which is clean, very high standards, sometimes unnecessary, this much of treatment is unnecessary, but these standards have been there. Of course, taste of water has changed, because if you switch from surface water to groundwater, when you run out of water, surface water, taste might change, but the quality has been good. In Iran, we're talking about 70% of the population living in urban areas. So in most places, you have 24/7 access to clean drinking water. That's very unique in the region. But rural water supply is not that good, and we have not done a good job. And this is, again, a problem of development, where you start developing in some region, those developed places get stronger and stronger politically. They extract the resources, they take things from you, and then you create a gap, and that gap can never be filled with bad planners. When it comes to urban wastewater collection, we're doing a terrible job. The traditional systems in that part of the world, especially in Iran, were so we were using nature-based solution, using the capacity of the soil to kind of treat your wastewater. So let it infiltrate and let it clean it up itself. And it was working when the cities were small, when the population of the country was less than 10 million. But now, Tehran metropolitan has 12 million or something people. So it's not going to work anymore. And then you have industrial pollution. You have all sorts of fertilizer pollution. You have antibiotic and all these pills that we're taking every day and polluting that. And they're coming back to our system. So that sort of wastewater gets into the groundwater, and the groundwater is used to irrigate something, and we eat that food. But don't think that's Iran. You do the same here too. That is a problem that in the environmental world we haven't solved yet, and people in the health sector should also help us understand the drastic effects of what we are doing right now. So this is important. Why is this important? Because it's not only about the quality of water and how it affects your water. It is also because wastewater itself is gold. It's golden. And it's a valuable resource that you can put into use and get back get back into the system. Now, if you go throughout the country. If you go around the country, you see a lot of scenes like this. This is Lake Urmia in northwest Iran, one of the largest hypersaline lakes in the world, and the largest in the Middle East, used to be, right? In a matter of a decade or so, more than a decade, we dried it up almost completely. It's dead. Now, this tragedy is very important I think in the environmental history of Iran, in the modern environmental history of Iran, for several reasons. The story is the Aral Sea story. It's not Iran's product. It's the same problem as Salt Lake in Utah and Salton Sea in California. So Smart humans think that water is flowing and we have to use it. Even water law here in the United States says beneficial use of water. And how we understood the term beneficial use has evolved over time. But beneficial means for making money. Or still you're selling water to people, still you're making money. But drinking water, industrial, agricultural, and so on. So the good governments with good plans and people who want to help, and engineers who want to help the development process and people around these places say, okay, water is flowing in, let's divert it for agriculture. Let's put it in this reservoir. Let's create jobs. Let's give it to people. And then it's not, again, rocket science. If inflow decreases and you have evaporation from these free surfaces, then your wetlands would dry, right? This is a lake. It dried up, that easy. It's a shallow lake and it dried faster. And now the people of the region are exposed to salt storms and dust storms. So the same people you were trying to help economically are now having health issues, might have cancer, all sorts of problems, plus dust and salt particles can sit on their lands and productivity of agricultural lands would also drop. The problem here is that you know the solution. You know that you have to increase the inflow to these places and solve the problem. RLC, all other places that we have seen the same problem, same tragedy. And this is just a thinking thing. It's a development phase. It's, we have what we call a hydraulic mission era in our development phase. In the hydraulic mission era, the thinking paradigm is that we have to do anything we can to control the water, to take water out of the system with building reservoirs, digging deeper, transferring water, and whatever you can do. So that's the mentality, and we have gone through it in the United States before the green revolutions and the fights between the environmentalists. We see like how many dams we've built, how fast we have gone through that route. Even the federal water project when it was in California, I don't recall who the president was at the time, but the president of the United States, I remember reading this many years ago, but the quote there was that he said that today we are preventing the water to be wasted to the ocean. So the water which is going to the ocean, he said, that's stupid, right? Clean water, salt water, let's save it. And you don't know that you can create saltwater intrusion, you can damage the ecosystem, fish, everything, and even the groundwater in the coastal area. It takes us time to realize. So that's another thing. All of the things that we are saying today as smart people would have unintended consequences. All right, so same thing for people before us who have made mistakes. The problem we're having is that the world, the countries are at different development stages. The problem we are having is that we cannot, for many reasons, for many political and social reasons, we cannot convince a lot of countries in the developing world to learn from the mistakes of the developed world. Because in many cases, we're not that honest about the mistakes that we have made in this part of the world. Plus, they watch, they see Hollywood, they like the American lifestyle, they think this is the most successful economy, still running a big agriculture, still having all these things. So that sort of American dream is affecting development in the rest of the world. Yes, we are here, we're promoting a sustainable lifestyle. What is a sustainable lifestyle? Let's not use cars, let's not eat meat, that's their life right now, right? In many places, that's their lifestyle today. But they're dreaming about having a car, eating meat, getting chubbier. Here we want to lose weight and go beyond meat and all that, right? The problem is that we want to go through the development stages as the West has done it. Because the West made the first move, they're the pioneer in this gap, they're ahead of us in development. And when they tell us that we have made a mistake, we don't even believe it. That was my problem. So when I tell them that we shouldn't make this mistake, they're like, yeah, hey, now that's our turn. They're telling us you shouldn't develop and you should cut your greenhouse gases. The days they were taking our oil, that was not a problem, right? And it's true. Look at the countries we blame about how much oil they have produced, how much gas they have produced. What is the state of their economy? We don't talk about where the oil went. We talk about where it was drilled, right? What was the consequence of using that oil to reach a development stage and you know, the economic situation that we have? We don't talk about that. And that's even the problem we are having in the environmental world, shaming the wrong people. Right? So I always use the example of Sweden fighting prostitution with banning buying sex, not selling sex. So if you manage to ban oil, you know, buying oil, then congratulations. But don't blame the countries which are starving, and you know, one of the reasons that they're starving is that you have continued buying their oil. So a lot has happened around Lake Urumia, and we have had a national task force and so on. And during floods, it looks better. And during wet seasons, it looks better. This is last year after floods, and a lot of things actually done by the task force. But why is this important? Because the magnitude of this problem was so big that no one could deny it. It was visible. It was part of Iran's history, culture. It happened in northwest of Iran, a Turkish region of Iran. The Turks are powerful politically. So you know, we have had situations like this in the east, close to the Afghan border. We didn't complain. But this became part of the dialogue, part of everyday conversation on social media. Everyone, I mean, most people shared some, I can't even say most people, but a lot of people shared photos of Lake Urumia, talked about Lake Urumia, and it became a symbol of environmental degradation in Iran. That's what I think when most of the people realize what is happening. And at the beginning, it was a little political to talk about Lake Urumia, but then the government let people talk about Lake Urumia. So Lake Urumia became a symbol of what is happening. And this is Iran. The convention that we have on the UN Convention for Protection of the Wetlands have been signed in the city of Ramsar. It's called Ramsar Convention. And in the city, which was like, you know, and at the time they signed it, I think there were only less than 20 countries signing this, joining this convention. And it happened in Iran. But the country which was at the forefront of fighting against, you know, fighting for wetlands and protecting wetlands is now having a lot of wetlands going like this, either drying up, becoming new dust beds and dust sources, or becoming highly polluted. As we're speaking, there's a wetland in North Iran which 37,000 birds have been recently, like, just died. And we still can't figure out why. And they were like migratory birds. They were like passing through Iran. So on the surface, we are seeing what is happening. A person in water, when I explain it to the public, I say, surface water is our checking account. So checking account is, you know, gets renewed. We get our salary from nature, and we keep using it. Now, what happens when you run out of your checking account runs out of money? You go after your saving. Hopefully you have some. Unfortunately or fortunately, we have a lot of water under the ground in a lot of places. California, India, Iran. So we have gone after our groundwater. Again, modernization. In the process of modernization, land reforms of Iran and so on have been very destructive to some of the social structures we had around managing water traditionally in Iran. So what happened is, with the introduction of pumps and wells, then a competition was created between wells and our traditional systems, which had to be run collectively and on a cooperative basis. So every farmer was kind of given a pump, and with a pump you have a well. That is what actually we are doing today, very proudly tweeting and showing cases that we say, we have given sustainable pumps to farmers around the world. And what is a sustainable pump in a reductionist mind? A pump which is solar-based. So if it's using solar energy, it's sustainable. They don't think that if you're giving so many farmers pumps, and they're pumping from the same aquifer, yes, for a few years, they would have a better life. But soon they'll be bankrupt under the ground. They would have tragedy of the commons, and then there would be damages to the economy, ecosystem, and so on, right? And you know, so we repeat the same mistakes. Now the source of energy has changed. We think it's sustainable. There is no problem. So groundwater has been being tapped in Iran aggressively. And that is actually how you can hide your water problems, because no one sees what is happening under the ground. Surface water is obvious. So our reliance on groundwater has increased. Now we're at 60% of our water is coming from groundwater. Groundwater also gets recharged every year, but we are using much more than our annual budget. So there are estimations that about 134 billion cubic meters of water. So what we have used is so the excessive use has been around 134 billion cubic meters of water. That was the budget of Iran, the water budget that I talked about. So now, though, the groundwater problem also becomes obvious. First thing is that people don't appreciate this connection, but when your groundwater level goes down, it also affects your surface water. Most people don't understand this and don't realize the connection, and they blame things on climate change on the surface. So there are other impacts, though, which are now becoming more obvious. That's land subsidence. Land subsidence is happening at a drastic rate in Iran. Why is that important? Because you have infrastructure, important infrastructure, gas, electricity, all these things that you've put under the ground. What will happen? And then there are buildings, all the things you have built. You have an airport, you have this. So it's very scary. Again, that's something that many people don't notice. But sinkholes are so big that you can't deny them. So sinkholes is the new, they're the new problem in Iran that we didn't have before. So not like the Californians, like the Floridians who have that problem. But now let's say, if we are in this situation, what are we really experiencing? So surface water, checking account, finish. We've also gone after our saving account. The water that we inherited from our ancestors is also gone. What is this situation to you? The Iranians keep calling it a crisis. So, and I used to do the same, and I wrote articles about a crisis. But at some point, I questioned myself about this. And looking at Iran's news, like everything is the term crisis is being used for almost everything, to the extent that the society has lost sensitivity to it, because we're dealing with a corona crisis, we're dealing with an economic crisis, we're dealing with the Trump crisis, we're dealing with international crisis, political crisis, social crisis, and all these things. And if you have so many crises, then can you really call them a crisis? What is a crisis? When I read about a crisis is an extreme situation which happens in the system, but then when it happens, it brings all the forces together to address that extreme situation. Am I seeing that in Iran? No. And then crisis has a limited term. In that period, you have a chance to address the problem and fix part of the system and restore part of the system, or you would completely fail. Then I go around Iran and I see all these problems around the country, and I'm wondering if I can fix them or not. And as I was saying, the solution is easy. I know that I have to give more water to the Aral Sea and Lake Urumi and all these wetlands. Why can't I do it, even when I have floods? Because then I have defined implemented all these development projects. People have jobs, people have houses, people have bought land. So the very same people who are mad at you for drying up the Lake Urumi are now willing to give up their water to save the lake. It's easy to sit down and blame. But so you have the legacy issues. Once you develop, and then you cannot really go backward in development. That is the problem of the environmental world. That is the problem of the policymakers in the developments, in the environmental space. Because in the environmental space, there is no immediate reward. No one gets rewarded. No policymaker can really get rewarded for a good action on the environment. Whatever you do is against the immediate benefits of the people. You raise prices, people don't like it. You remove subsidies, people don't like it. Right? And if your economy is not strong, you can't do those things. If you're politically not strong, you can't do those things. So Iran raised the price of gasoline recently. Have you seen any article in the media thanking Iran for the environmental advantages environmental benefits of this decision? No, because what we saw was chaos, and then we don't trust the system. People have lost their faith in the system, and no one cares about the environmental benefits of this. If you're starving, if you're having problems, and Iran is not, people are not, the situation in Iran is not as bad as Iraq, is not as bad as Yemen, is not as bad as many other countries in the region. But the environment is a secondary thing. So whatever you do has a penalty for you as a policymaker. The benefits would be seen in a decade or so, would be obvious in a decade or so when you're out of office, dead, or in jail in that part of the world. So why would you do that? When I know that the stock market signals can get me votes, when I know that keeping jobs in certain industries would buy me votes, when I know that farmers are the ones actually have bought their votes forever and support forever in most of the region, you don't want to mess with the farmers. So you can't really do anything. You're locked. So you go around the country and you see all these problems around the country, increasing conflicts, sinkholes, and so on. So I started this concept of bankruptcy and arguing in the same way. So that, checking account, saving account, and not only we have used these, we have also used our credit cards because we have allocated water to people and we have spent the money that we don't have. Like we have written checks and given to people, but we don't have that much water. And why is that important? Because by this argument, my main point was that we have failed. The crisis is over. We're past that stage. In a crisis mode, there is a chance to restore the system to an extent. We can restore many of these things, and we have to admit that we have failed. A bankrupt person, you can file for bankruptcy and tell all the creditors about it and go negotiate any deal you can. Or you can go get more loans with high interest and deny the fact that you have got bankrupt. If you deny this fact, the cost of mitigation and adaptation keeps increasing. And that's what we are doing. We are denying reality, as we did in the case of coronavirus. We denied reality, then we say, oh, yes, there are a few numbers, and your numbers don't match the rest of the world, right? And then it becomes chaotic, and it's too late to address it properly. So proactively, essentially, we can't address most of environmental problems. We wait for a crisis to come, then there is a window of opportunity. As a policymaker, if you use it, you can take action. If not, the window of opportunity is closed. And it's really hard to deal with water problems. You have drought, then floods, and people get confused. Like, didn't you say we don't have enough water? But you have so much water that you couldn't even control it. Right? So then it becomes harder and harder to deal with this bankruptcy problem. But why is bankruptcy important? Because a bankrupt person knows that besides mitigation, he or she needs to also put efforts in adaptation, to reminding people that this might be our new normal, our new reality, this is what we are facing. We made wrong analysis and we had a wrong perception. Now that I hope you believe that Iran is bankrupt, let's talk about some causes. So why is Iran in this situation? I think there are three main causes, and recognizing these causes are important because many of these, as the rest of the environmental problems in that part of the region, are not related to those who are running the environmental sector and water sector. The causes of environmental and water problems in most of the Middle East is political economy. The way they run their economies. It's not about food, it's not about agriculture, it's about jobs. It's about survival. It's about maintaining the status quo. Now, one reason for this is the obvious reason, it still actually gets denied, and I have got criticized for talking about this problem, that okay, population of Iran increased, right? Before, in the 19th century, we were less than 10 million, right? After that, then development, growth, and so you can protect your system, better health system, and so on. So 1961, 24 million. Before the revolution, around 1979 revolution, around 36, 7 million. In a matter of 2 decades, right after the revolution, we doubled the population. Ideology, also, I think it also depended on the age levels and so on, so the distribution of age groups, but also strong ideology. I'm the only child, by the way, but lots of big families. And so that was chaos, and it created a chaos for my generation, actually. We had, issues with, like, babies didn't have dry milk and all those issues started there. Then there was not enough seat for us at schools. They had to run schools in, 2-3 shifts, and then 3 of us sitting at a small desk, and then they have to train teachers. They started this school for training teachers, so trying to keep up with this boom. And then as we go forward, we are having this problem. Then my generation reaches the university entrance exam, which is like one of the biggest things in the lives of Iranian, where you end up going and what you study. And then we didn't have enough seats in the university, so we created a lot of universities. We trained a lot of professors. And then these people graduate, they have to get a job. There is no job, we continue studying. So a lot of us, we have become scientists and got PhDs by force, not by choice, because there was no job. But and then, if you go look at the government documents in 10 years ago, still they were for the year 2021, they were using 100 million as the estimate. That was what they were planning for, but that was never realized. Why? Yes, the educational things and all those things matter too, but there's also, our generation who doesn't gets married late, doesn't want to reproduce. We have no jobs. We're hopeless. We want to migrate. We want to get out of the country. So that also affects the system. So this is, the limit to growth thing that people would stop giving birth if they're not in a good situation also. So now the government has stopped birth, control plans and all these things because they want to increase the population. Their argument is that our generation, as I said, we retire before doing any work, but we don't have any backup generation. And that is a scary thing for any government. But can you really, handle more population? So how's that affecting? So, your water. So if your population increases, your water availability decreases per capita, right? But more important than the number of population is where your population lives. You remember the discussion about variability of temperature and water availability and all those that I said at the beginning. That is extremely important. Bad development, uneven development in Iran, lots of things being affected by politics, have created a few number of metropolitans, huge metropolitans for us, 6, 7, 8 cities that we go to. We don't have enough small and medium-sized cities. So we have big capitals of power where people go to for jobs and better life. And in management science, we call this a success to the successful paradigm. You're at Yale, you know it. If you're at Yale, you get the best students, you get best professors. When your papers are evaluated, the Yale thing has a role. When at NSF they get evaluated, so you have a higher chance of getting students, producing better output, and getting research funding and having better endowment, and your gap remains big with the rest of it. So same thing with big metropolitans that compete with their surrounding and extract a lot of resource. Now, another problem, another major cause, which is a big thing in the Middle East. Some people say that the Middle East has run out of water in the 70s. But the question is that we talked about all these all this jargon about water wars and all these things. What happened? They never happened. Why? Because not only we managed to hide it through our groundwater, but also we managed to hide it through importing food. People never realized that the food that we are importing comes with a lot of water, right? Wheat might seem dry to you. Your bread might seem dry to you, but it takes a lot of water to produce. So that is how, through trade, we have managed to do that. But for the Middle Eastern leaders, their food self-sufficiency has been always a big complex, an achievement that they wanted to make. All the ambitious leaders. Shah of Iran wanted to do more and more about it. Gaddafi had plans. Saudi Arabia became a wheat exporter at some point in time. So this thing that I have money and I can beat the nature, just give me the technology, which is still the case. I mean, that's the thinking over there, has created a lot of problems. But if you talk to the governments of the region, they blame food security. And I think this is very important. Anyone who talks to the developing world and does anything about water management there should not prescribe no food production at home. It's stupid if we suggest that, because the governments in the region know that is one of their problems, deficiencies. And when they run into any sort of fight with the rest of the world, the food sector gets affected. It happened in this case of Saddam. It happened in 8 years of war of Iran and Iraq. Qatar recently even went through an episode of food insecurity issues. So, but how do you define? Do you go for food self-sufficiency, everything at home, or you define food security in a different way? So the Iranians, if you look at their statistics, they have done an acceptable job, and for example, for wheat and cereal, they can do much better than this if they caught some sort of unnecessary crops in Iran, which they have not been interested in doing. But if you talk to the governments, they say, we want food security. And if you look at the definition of food security, the understanding of the concept of food security is different from one silo to another. If you move from one silo to another or one community to another. FAO, it's all about like nutrition and access, affordability, and so on. But to a policymaker, that's not the case. To an intelligence agent, that's not the case. So Iran's the agricultural sector's contribution to the economy was about 33%. Now this is down to 10%. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Do you know? We don't know. Why? Because with this level of information that I gave you, you can't tell. Why? Because you don't know the size of the economy. If the economy has got bigger, maybe that's a good thing, that's a good sign. Just to give you an idea, California uses 80% of its water in the agricultural sector. Do you know the level of the contribution of California's agriculture to its leading economy? 2%. Exactly. So 2%. So this is something that, again, a lot of people use a number that can be very misleading. So 2% of the economy, 2% of GDP. Here we're talking about 10% and 90% of water. So 90% of water goes to agriculture in MENA, Middle East and North Africa. Why? Because they have to irrigate. They don't have natural budget. They cannot do everything through rain-fed agriculture. So they have to irrigate, and that is why they use a big percentage for this. 10% of area only. But this is what it's all about, I think. This is the reason of all environmental problems that we have. So the capitalist system, when we talk about climate change, we want to come up with a solution for a problem which has been created by the existing economic and development institutions, right? And we want the condition for that solution to be workable and practical is that it should be, we say, we want it to be economically justified. So we want the same institutions which created an unprecedented problem to solve the problem they created. It doesn't work that way. It won't work, right? You have to do things upstream. You have to make changes, make big reforms upstream. Over there, the problem is jobs. Who farms? The weakest sector of the economy, mostly. Yes, we have wealthy farmers too, but mostly the farmers in that part of the world, they're not subsistence farmers in the traditional way, like, or smallholder farmers like Africa, but, and then how do they do it? Before the revolution, after the revolution, Iran has never had plans. So you take your money out of your oil, right? You sell your oil, you take your money, and then you subsidize another sector. Essentially, you bribe them, you shut them up, right? You keep them busy, let them farm, because you don't have alternative jobs. And the easiest development path is and all these countries do that, is they go through this development stage of agricultural development. That's the first thing you do. It's the easiest thing. Then it comes with a lot of construction, a lot of projects, engineering projects, so lots of jobs in construction, build dam construction, doing this. So that's the easy path forward, and that's something that many countries have practiced, and most strong economies have gone through the agricultural development stage. Again, we look at them and we want to repeat it. We don't want to replicate Singapore or South Korea. We go after other countries. But this is the problem, and now it becomes much harder to deal with the problem when your economy is under pressure, when you're in a sanctioned mode and your economy is not doing good, and you're not thinking about, your problems are about today. Like in Iran, it's all about crisis management. It's about day-to-day management. I think Iran, except for its intelligence and military sector, has not been really proactive in any other sector. Even in the proactive sector, you can see how they have defeated people like me hopefully by mistake. So 20% of jobs rely on this, and more than 1/3 of the population indirectly rely on this sector. And this is a heavily subsidized sector. You give your water almost for free. You give your energy at a cheap price, very cheap. So water price is never a limit when in decision making of a farmer. So water level goes down, everyone knows it. Tragedy of the commons, everyone knows it. We dig deeper, we keep going down. And we keep digging deeper and deeper. What is the consequence? As the government, I have to pay subsidies more and more, because once the water level drops, the amount of energy we need to pump water out increases. So I need to produce more energy, more greenhouse gas emissions, but also have to give more subsidies. And then if you think about it, it's like I'm giving you money to destroy the natural resources. That's what we are doing. But if I do that, you feel busy. If you have no jobs, then you're in pain, right? Plus, this is a sector that I heavily rely on. If Iran loses the support of this sector, I don't think the Islamic Republic would survive with losing that sector. This sector voted in recent election, regardless of what was happening, regardless of all the things happening in the rest of it. Now, when it comes to rain-fed agriculture and irrigated agriculture, the area under rain-fed and irrigated are almost the same, but the yields are very different. About 10% comes from rain-fed. Why? Because of the conditions and because we're not doing a good job. The rest of the world, 60% of food comes from rain-fed agriculture. So if you want to optimize it for the world, if there is no borders in the world and if we are really equal, then we farm in some places and then trade foods for other things. But what we have done in the economic, currently being done is that there are countries who have a lot of water, like Europeans, and they don't farm. They sell service and industry at an expensive price, and they buy cheap food from Africa, from the developing world. Farmers are dying committing suicide in India, running out of water, losing their jobs, committing suicide. We talk about it, but we are enjoying our Indian rice also, right? We buy that and we enjoy it. But it's not going to be an optimal trade, and it's not a fair trade, because water is underpriced. Food is also underpriced in the world. Food is the product of the water sector. It's the main product of the water sector. And as long as food is cheap, there is no way we can do anything in the water sector. And then the third cause being mismanagement. So the two that I talked about are not really, in the authority of the water sector people. They didn't determine the population growth plans, development plans, and so on. They didn't. Even when it comes to how to run the economy. Can you diversify your economy? If you can't create jobs, in the industrial sector, service sector, so many young and talented and educated Iranians there, we're not using them. Because there is another sector, another group of people which are scary. And I've discussed it actually with the government. I said, listen, however I calculate this, game theory, like whatever I use, I come to a conclusion that empowering the farmers is the solution to Iran's water problems, environmental problems. You have to give more role to these people. You have to make this sector competitive. You have to raise the prices, and get them involved in management. They do the best job. But My conspiracy theory is that you don't want to do it because if they're in power, they might not like you anymore, right? Do you want to do that? Do you want to commit suicide? And I think, again, another paradox that we have in government. So this is not the number of wells in Iran. These are the number of dams in Iran. So you suppress a nation. So I said mismanagement and thirst for development. Our thirst for development started before the revolution. Many of the projects that we implemented after the revolution were planned before the revolution. Unfortunately, in the fights that we have with the Islamic Republic, we don't tell the truth. We simply say, oh, we only have 13 dams before the revolution, and now we have so many dams. No one says that if there was no revolution, how many dams would have been built, right? And then it's like, you have the other side also, right? You know, the Islamic Republic comes and say, there were only this many dams before the revolution, and we have built so much. And it's like, okay, yeah, there was no mobile, you know, we didn't have 4G before the revolution, and you have it. Can you get credit for it? But so the thirst for development, the price of oil goes up, Iran becomes more powerful, they want to become one of the top 10 economies in a few years, building and developing and going through the structural route. And that, if you think it was only the Shah of Iran, look at what is happening in Saudi, look at what has happened in United Arab Emirates. United Arab Emirates wasn't under sanctions, it didn't have the problems that the Iranians have. Still within a decade, we built a city like Dubai, which has water problems, which has air pollution, which has traffic. They had the best world consultants at their disposal, they had money, they had no sanctions. All the smart people were doing business there. Look at the situation, because the mentality still is there. If you feel more insecure, you go for, you know, you want to show that you can do it, right? So we wanted to show to the world that we could do it. Under all the, you know, pressure, the economic pressure in Iran, Iran became the top 3 dam builder in the world. Among the top 3 dam builder in the world. And that is very important because it creates a lot of jobs. Construction creates a lot of jobs. Not only that, but also there were people who thought they're helping their communities. Parliament members who got approval for this, pushing these agendas. But then you build too many dams in the same basin, of course you run out of water, right? So this is the situation we have had. We wanted to prove, and that is what that part of the world is doing. Try to prove to the rest of the world that they have the biggest, tallest, largest, whatever. We can't even build islands in the Persian Gulf, right? And then transferring water. We're water short, doesn't matter, we bring it, right? This is Isfahan. This is the typical Isfahan. This is how Iranians remember Zayende-Rud and the city of Isfahan. And the city of Isfahan, I think, is the only city, like large city, where you feel water bankruptcy. In the rest of the region, in the rest of the country, it's hidden because people don't see it. You open your tap and water is running. This is the situation. And you have to go, like, watch videos where, like, a few times a year they let water into the river. There are people singing, dancing, happy, like, you can see like how things change. These bridges are places for singing, having fun, having community meetings, being there, like tourist attractions and so on. So how did we get there? This is my research, which I can say proudly, like, it's being extensively used in fights against water transfer projects in Iran these days by the environmental groups and a lot of people even in the water sector. That, okay, we looked at our engineering solution to water shortage, whether through digging deeper, building dams, transferring water, desalinating, whatever. What we try to do is address water scarcity. I'm scarce, interbasin water transfer, digging deeper, whatever I can do, and now it's like taking water out of air. So I try to increase my supply. That's my authority, that's my space, that's my operation space. I'm being asked to solve this problem. I'm a water engineer, that's my solution. Invention, and then coming up, doing calculations, hydraulics, equations, and that's my solution. I don't think about another problem, which is promoting development in a region where you shouldn't have really development. You promote development in Isfahan, in Zayende-Rud, which is heavily industrialized, heavy agriculture, high population. More people keep coming. California, In Los Angeles, we have the exact same problem. 2/3 of water in California comes from the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. We run the water through the Central Valley, heavy agriculture. Then we get to Southern California, people are having golf courses and all that. And people keep migrating there because of beautiful weather and all the Hollywood advertisement, right? So then what can you ask people to move out? Silicon Valley, the same thing. Silicon Valley is more of a new development in California. Same thing. So because we think that technology can address our problem and we don't consider the socio-economic dimension. So if we promote development, that increases our water demand and the problem keeps coming back. You have infection in your body that's causing a headache, you take a Tylenol. So your pain goes away for a few hours, it comes back, you take another Tylenol. So you keep doing this, the infection keeps getting worse because you need antibiotic, but you're taking Tylenol. You're addressing the symptom, not the cause. So yes, the easiest solution to all our environmental problems is don't give birth, stop population growth, and adopt children. How many environmental campaigns do you see who talk about adopting children? We don't. There are certain things that we don't talk about because we're not honest, sorry. So we address the symptom, not the cause. And then same thing, irrigation efficiency. This is like, and about Israel. Israel has increased its irrigation efficiency and then they did a good job in many things. The stories we hear about Israel are all positive. The water situation in Israel is not as positive as we think. There are lots of problems that we don't talk about, lots of things that we are seeing, and a lot of people who are fighting against the problems there that I know at least one person who had to leave the country. So similar things over there. But irrigation efficiency improvement in the same way has affected the problem. So people thought that if they switch to drip irrigation, it is helpful. And it is helpful because you reduce your evaporative losses. So Iran's irrigation efficiency right now is about 35%. But the water that you lose, how do you lose it? You lose it as a farmer, but some of it gets evaporated. A big part of it gets infiltrated. It goes into the ground and it goes into your surface water. When you increase irrigation efficiency, you lose your recharge. So FAO did a study 3 years ago, saying that wherever we have done irrigation efficiency improvement, governments around the world have invested heavily in this. We have increased water use, we have lost our recharge, and farmers are not stupid, so they're gonna they have more water, so they either expand their land or farming area or change their crops. They go for a thirstier crop. So another solution that can backfire. But that's our mode of operation. So we have other things like inefficient structure and very hierarchical. And when you have very hierarchical systems, then you have corruption because from top to bottom there are tons of things. There are middlemen and all these things. So there are opportunities for corruption. People lose their faith in system. People want to take advantage of the system, and then corruption becomes increasingly problematic. And then our boundaries water authority boundaries don't match our water basins, which is another problem that we have around the world. Conflicts and cooperation coexist. We have the same thing in Iran. Water wars, yes, politicians talk about high-level water wars, but the reality is that the real water wars are at the farm level. Farmers in the history have killed each other for water, and as water becomes more scarce, you see more problems at the farming level between farmer communities, and that is very scary. But I didn't talk about climate change. Does climate change have an effect? Yes, but as something which exacerbates the problem. Do sanctions have effect? Yes, as a mechanism which exacerbate the problem, put pressure on a weak economy, and the weak economy tries to become more self-sufficient, takes more natural resources, mines more, takes more jobs, and wants to farm as usual, and cannot really establish trade relationship for its food, develops a paranoia about food insecurity, and then then continues business as usual. Political instability, high inflation. Anywhere you have high inflation, any model you run, any economic model you run tells you that you have to maximize immediate benefit because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So if you're a farmer, farm today at the maximum level because you don't know if there is water tomorrow. And this fight keeps going on, and again, this is our problem, I think. This is also the security world's problem, the intelligence community's problem. That, at the end of the day, we talk about human security. Sustainable development was supposed to be a concept, an umbrella concept, similar to security. But we narrowed down to these things and we created competition for them. And this is my solution. So I've written a lot of guidelines and the things that Iran can do and the things that all those things that you can think of, change your crop pattern, do this, do that, all the generals that you hear about. But if I narrow them down, this is my solution matrix for Iran. There, and I don't think anyone would implement it. But diversify the economy, adapt to the new situation, and tell people that this is the new situation. Unless you raise awareness, you can't do anything. And this is the thing that you don't want to do, but that's what you need to do. So it's done. It's over. Yeah. So there are a few articles that you can have a look at, including an article that has been in a special issue edited by Professor Amanat here, and then another documentary that you can watch, and it was a recent interview with the Macmillan report on environmental security in the Middle East that if you're interested, you can watch and email me anytime.